I like sundew, I always have. I like their colour, I like their insectivorous habit, and they always live in interesting, exciting places. Now, it's been suggested that the Bursledon Common sundews have been around for 2,500 years, but the oldest record I've been able to find is 1983. In 1983, just the round leaf sundew was found, not the oblong leafed one. And it was the same in 1984, just one species, the round leafed, rotundifolia. Now, this little note was made by Paul Bowman in '86, and it summarises all that's really relevant in that time to Peewit Hill. It was called Neckley Hill in those days, but the grid reference is quite right. So we're talking about the same place. And I've highlighted the key bit is that two species of sundew were found along a track with bare peat. Now, I never saw who walked this track. It may have been several individuals, but what did happen was that a year after I'd first noticed these, that was 1989, a huge tree fell down in 1990 and it completely blocked the path. And by blocking the path, it meant that people weren't using the track and the habitat began to change and the sundews began to reduce in numbers because they hadn't got the place to germinate and grow. So I decided to do a bit of conservation work, just cutting with a scythe and raking up and taking a mattock to the rhododendron bushes, because in those days they were quite small. And this little note, which you probably noticed a few of the really good plants that grow there, the rhododendron bushes on the margin gradually began to move in and the scrub developed into woodland or larger scrub. And the site was going downhill despite what I could do. Now this brings us bang up to date with the period we should be in. And it was an exciting period. While about Eastleigh, a biodiversity action plan for the borough was published, and it was pretty inspiring, some really good ideas. The habitats were marked in the borough, and that tiny, weeny little piece, which I'm trying to indicate with my pointer, my cursor, that is Bursledon Common. So it's absolutely minute. And I was pleased to see that they bigged up roundleaf sundew on the site. But by 2010, sundew couldn't be found, and that was in July. So I reckon if they weren't found in July, there could have been none left. So there are no actual plants left on the site because of the growth of plants such as rhododendron and willow. But a bit of luck in some ways came along. In 2016, Eastleigh Borough Council entered a 15-year management agreement, and they did a massive amount of clearance of willow and rhododendron and all sorts of other unpleasant plant growth. And I was able to restart counting the sundews. And there were just 2 plants there in 2016. And we started, or at least I started, to do a little bit of intense management where the sundews were found. And 2 years after that, when there were about 40 sundews, a botanical survey managed to find rotundifolia. So these are the graphs from the counts I made. So in the early 90s, there were good numbers of sundew, certainly 500 or so. But by 2010, there were none left. Then we had the clearance under a management agreement and just a couple of sundew. And ever since, the number of sundew has built up so that last year there were 1,200 or so plants. I've noticed the 3 fold increase year on year, but this time, the back there, 17, 18, it's a very dry year, and the numbers of sundew barely progressed. Now, these sundews must be coming from the seed bank because, well, there's just not the potential for a fresh seed from 2 plants. So we got a good idea, at least I think they're all in the seed bank waiting. There's a different scale for the oblong leaf sundew, Drosera intermedia, never more than 50, well, not even 50 plants did I find. And we expected to see them reappear in 2016, oops, but there was none. Okay, sundew seeds are very, very small, but they can persist in the seed bank for at least 40 years, I've been told anecdotally.
Just a minute or so left.
Okay, so I decided to look for the seeds and hopefully get germination. So it's a case of taking a mattock, chopping out the millennia, making it look a bit better and really attractive for sundew seeds to germinate in. Results: round leaf sundew, these are just seedlings, and this seedling, which the leaf shape is quite different from the round leaves. So these are, I believe, Drosera intermedia, and we can now complete the graft, bring it up to date. Drosera intermedia is back on the site, so there's the potential to be just as good as it was in the 90s. Hurrah.